So I'm Larry Rosnick. I'm a Canadian painter sculptor, and I live in Port Colborne, Ontario, just across the Peace Bridge in Canada. And this is my sculpture, 7 lucky birds hammered into a piece of wood. And I started off originally as a painter. I started painting just before I graduated from university with an engineering degree in geophysics. And since nobody knew me as a painter, I essentially had to flee the country, and I went to Europe to paint. And I spent 5 long extended trips in Europe painting and living abroad. And once I spent a year and a half just living in France, working, skiing and painting. And when I was over in Europe, I found that everybody was so much friendlier, and you're closer together, places are smaller. And I came to the conclusion it was because everybody had all this art around them and architecture, and I was living in buildings that were hundreds of years old, and I thought, oh man, this is what I want to do, is become a sculptor. So I came back to Canada back in '82, and I have a studio and a sculpture garden in Port Colborne, and I had the fortunate opportunity to take a retraining program at Niagara College, and I became a welder fitter. And I worked in the shipbuilding industry, a couple of short-term contracts, but I learned how to work with steel, big plates, and how to build a ship actually. So then I bought equipment and whatnot, set up a studio, and I've been doing steel sculptures for my garden ever since. And essentially I'm a realist in my painting. I only paint what I see. I don't do abstract work, and my sculpture reflects this. I mean, I do birds, I do fish, I do lightning bolts, people and trees. And I work in standard construction material, which is plate, pipe, square tubing, and channel, I-beam, and I cut pieces out of them or little elements. And normally what I do is I piece them together into a little story. And most of my pieces have titles that I think are important. One of my biggest pieces has 27 elements in it, and it's called A Canadian Landscape Blackened by Acid Rain. I have another one called Man Zapped by the Unknown Dangers of Technology. And this one has had a bit of humor to it. So 7 lucky birds hammered into a piece of wood. So a lot of my pieces reflect little stories or people. And I'm trying to get people to commission me to do portraits of their family in steel to put in their gardens. And I've got a couple of ideas about configurations of different structural elements that I could do portraits of people and whatnot. And interestingly enough with this one, what I found out after I did it is that the birds, when you tap them, whoop, that's a dead one. And when I normally exhibit it, I exhibit it with this rod as I have here, and I usually put it lower to the ground. And I like people to touch my work. I'm a very tactile person. I like to touch things and feel the texture and whatnot. And when I exhibit this, I put it lower, and I allow the children to gently tap on the birds. And it goes against this is art, do not touch kind of thing. And the children just love it. And so this is where I'm at. And I encourage people to come to Port Colborne and visit my gallery and think about commissioning a piece of work of their family for their sculpture garden. Anybody have any questions?
Do you have cards of your address?
I brought a couple of brochures. Yes, I can give you one of those. And sure.
Thank you, Larry.
Great. Thank you very much.